Welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. And don't adjust those apps because, yes, this is still season 2 of the podcast where I, Danielle Terciano, invite guests to come and share stories from past and present pop culture that has greatly influenced them. The guests that you're about to listen to and or watch, depending on what app you're actually on, they're all returning favorites from season 1. That's not a mistake, and neither is the fact that I just said guests, plural. Last week, if you listened to or watched the episode, you saw we had multiple guests on one episode. And it was a little bit challenging, I'll admit, to get as specific as I usually like to with the topics, having more than one person on. But it was also a lot of fun. And I wanted to continue to evolve this podcast in general and the format and the discussion. And so I said, let's do it again, but with a few tweaks. That's exactly what this episode is. It's a very special roundtable episode. And if you're looking at the calendar, you notice that today, the day of this episode drop, is Halloween. So it's a very special holiday roundtable episode where we'll be discussing the Scream franchise. My guests are not only returning favorites from season 1, they're friends, they're entertainment journalists, colleagues, they're fans of the Scream franchise. They are Chris Hayner, Megan Vick, and Marisa Roffman. Welcome back. I'm so excited. Chris, Marisa, Megan, I'm so excited to have you all back. And I'm excited to have you all back to talk about Scream because it is something we all have in common in the sense of we all really like the film and then the franchise, and we have different views, I think, on the ranking of the films in the franchise, which maybe we'll get to. Let's start with something that I want to do as kind of a setup because I always fail to set up things that we're discussing properly. And that's my own problem, and I'll work through it. But I want to, so obviously First Scream, we're going to start there. Came out in 1996. I want everyone to go around really quickly and just kind of set up where you were in your horror journey when this movie came out. And did you see it when it first came out? What was the process? I'll just start just so you get a sense of how much detail I want this early in the conversation because I want to talk to you guys about a lot of things and I don't want people to tune out after 4 hours. So just to give you all a little background. So 1996 came out December 20th. I might be off, but it came out right around Christmas holiday. I was 12 and I went to see it in theaters with my mom and some friends because we were 12 and it was rated R. And so we couldn't go by ourselves.
What?
What is this not a common? I just assumed you all were going to have a similar story, but I will say that I was not like a super big horror fan until this point. I had seen things like The Exorcist and I enjoyed them, but this was the movie that really made me want to start watching more. Anyway, I don't know. I was going to say, let's go clockwise, but I don't know what you guys can see. So I'll just call on you. Maybe we'll start with Chris.
Okay, I was 15, or I was about to turn 15, and I did not see it in theaters because my mother did not take me to see R-rated movies. She took me to see Dick Tracy. She took me to see Ninja Turtles and Ninja Turtles 2 and then Ninja Turtles 3, but did not take me to see Scream. She's also not a horror movie person. I saw it for the first time on VHS, baby, the way movies were meant to be seen. Chris Oswalt, one of the other Chris's in my class at school, like my year.
You said it like we were gonna know who this person was.
Yeah, you guys know.
Really nervous.
You guys know Oswald. He was a good guy. He brought the videotape over to my house, and me, him, and another friend, and my next door neighbor, who is a couple years older than I am, all watched it in my living room. And I'll always remember it because my dad watched the movie with us and then pieced out. And after he pieced out, so much high school drama unfolded that me and my next door neighbor had a field day.
Okay.
But I loved scary movies when
I was gonna say because I know you love them now, but you had already.
Them now. So I loved watching scary movies and I loved being scared. Oddly enough, the one I had the most trouble with was Freddy Krueger. I don't know why. I had recurring nightmares about Freddy Krueger as a child. So I distinctly remember watching Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the precursor to Scream, on VHS, through the little tiny holes in my baseball cap that I'd pull down over my eyes, and I'd watch it through the little tiny holes.
Yeah, but you still watched it. You still wanted
Absolutely,
to.
because I
I had this
loved it.
conversation with someone recently where it's like, you might be scared, you might be uncomfortable, but you still love it enough that you want to watch it. And I think that says a lot about not the genre necessarily, but the specific things in the genre that you are choosing to watch. Because some of them are just, bad, and we're not going to put up with our fear for that particular title.
Oh, I have.
Oh,
I love to do that
that might
too.
be a separate
Like
conversation.
80, just the entirety of the 80s slasher movement, like
Oh.
80% of those movies are terrible, but so good.
Well, that's why I'm glad that we all like Scream, because going into it, knowing it was a slasher, I didn't at 12 assume it was going to be, and this might sound strange to some people, but as highbrow as it ended up being.
Mm.
So, Marissa, what was your journey?
I was a scaredy cat. Did not like horror. I was traumatized super, super, like in a major life-changing way early on by horror films and that kind of stuff. So some of you may have heard the story before, literally got nightmares watching the Scream 2 TV spot. Like that's how afraid of horror films I was.
Wait, but
And
Scream 2. So you hadn't seen Scream 1 yet.
one, like because I was when Scream One was released, I was in single digits, so I was not in a place to be able to see that movie. And so like legitimately the television appropriate promo for Scream 2 scared me so much I had literal nightmares. Um, but I also watched Scream and weirdly, I'm pretty sure I watched Scream and Scream 3. So I didn't see Scream 2 in that
Mm.
initial process on
You watched them
VHS.
the right way.
No.
No,
Kidding,
like
kidding.
older me is like, how did I not watch them in order? But I'm pretty sure I got them both used VHSs from Blockbuster for like $1.99 each.
Heck
And
yeah.
so I was like, why not? And so I watched those when I was a teen, an early teen, and became obsessed. And like, so then I loved it. That was kind of my gateway into horror films as well. Why I was suddenly okay. I mean, I knew it had given me nightmares, but still, I
You were
decided
older at that point. And wait, did you watch them in order when you got them from?
three in order. I didn't watch two in order.
Okay, but you still started with one, because I was like, I have to reorganize the conversation I want us to have if we didn't all start with Scream 1. I think I just assumed we all did. Megan, is that true for you? Did you start with Scream 1?
Megan's younger than
Yes.
Danielle. Scream came out after she was born.
No, that's not true. I like Marissa, I was 7 when it
Oh,
came out.
I'm so old.
So I did not see it immediately, though my parents did not care. My dad took us to R-rated movies all the time. Um, but my brother is 5.5 years older than me, and he became pathologically obsessed with it. Like he had the Ghostface costume hanging from his ceiling fan when he slept at night. He had the entire script from the first movie printed out and taped to his wall in sequential order. So like, and I like also like Marissa was an absolute scaredy cat. Like my dad had shown me the Boris Karloff mummy from like 1939 or something, and that gave me nightmares. And the production value, guys, there of a 1939 mummy is like
Wonderful.
not it.
well, but when you're little, you don't know things like production value.
I
Yeah,
will
but it was
I
just
will
like that's how low the bar was for giving me nightmares. So I think like I avoided it in general, but my brother was so obsessed there was no like getting around
Hmm.
it. And so can't I vaguely remember he was watching it at my grandmother's house. So I did not see it in theaters. But we were in trouble for something. I can't remember what we did, but my mom was pissed. And so we were hiding out in the back room, just like trying to lay low. And I remember that's the room that we slept in and we watched it. And I did not have nightmares that night.
Oh,
And that was a novel thing. And it, like later I would realize it's like, oh, because the killers were human and they get killed by the smart person at the end of every movie. And I, even at 7, was a precocious little kid. I was like, I would never be the dump. I would never try to crawl out through a garage door.
Well, yeah,
Rest in peace,
but would
Tatum.
never be me.
no, but hearing you say that the fact that the killers were human made it less scary is what surprised me because I was the opposite.
Mm.
I was the kid who like I don't believe in any of this stuff. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in vampires. I don't believe in demons or like werewolves or whatever. And so I automatically, if I wouldn't really watch this movie because I wasn't interested in that content. But if I were to see something like that, I already was not suspending my belief as fully, and so I wasn't as scared as maybe other people were. But for a movie like this, and I was talking about this with someone recently, and she put it in the terms of this was the movie that scared her the most because she realized that any one of her friends could kill her. And I stepped back in that conversation now as a 40-year-old adult and went, yeah, I mean, it was pre-Columbine. And so I think like I didn't have that thought in the theater, but at the same time, the fact that these were just regular people made me really like the movie more, but also I would have assumed make it more scary. Now, I will say that because they were teenagers and I was kind of raising an eyebrow at like, could they have really pulled it off? It made it a little less scary to me at the time. And then we can talk about this in a minute, but like the Scream 3 of it all being like, oh, Roman secretly directed this and gave them all of the ideas and like all the tools and whatever, that made it more in my head realistic that teenagers could have maybe pulled it off, but not less scary necessarily.
No.
Yeah, and I logicked it that I would be the Sydney in the situation. I also feel like the fact that Billy and Stu were super hot also helped. You know what I mean? Like, but it just again, they were teenagers. Like, I'm smarter than a teenager. I would never run upstairs. I would like, I could point out all of the mistakes that people who got killed
Sure.
made, and so that made it easier for me. But like, I can't outrun a ghost that's contorting through my television, and so that just like,
That I'm glad you said, because like I'm always shocked when I get to talk about anything horror with Meg, because you are so not a horror. I texted her a gif of a scene from a movie one time and she didn't talk to me for a week. Like, Meg does not do horror. But
yeah.
I think this feels so much more realistic to me than now don't get me wrong, I feel like I'm more scared of supernatural things, but movies like this and to a certain extent The Strangers, which came out years later, but it's Home Invasion the movie, like these are things that can and do happen in the world, and that's horrifying to me.
Right. And that, I mean, that's partially why I wanted to start with like where we were in our journeys to talk about Scream, because I think age says a lot. I think what kind of horror we watched before Scream says a lot. And because there was so much fear going into Scream, and because there's so much youth going into Scream, I think that affects like what piece of the movie we latch on to. And I made a noise when Meg was like, they were hot. And I was like, but that to me also makes it worse. Like the hot guy you have a crush on might murder you. How does that not fuck you up?
I can't tell you. I will say, like, to Chris's point, at the time I watched Scream, I wasn't 100% off horror. I still had a vague hope. Again, because my brother was so obsessed with it that like I could be cool enough to like hang out. I did not completely swear off horror until I was in 8th grade with The Ring, which we do not need to discuss. But like from that was the movie that I was like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. Like, I'm just not. It's not happening. And Scream to this day is the only like horror movie I will go see.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm like, nah, no thanks.
And you have a killer jacket. You
Yeah,
have a killer
which my
Scream
brother,
denim jacket.
which my
you're
brother
not
made for me.
wearing. I was like,
Oh, but I am wearing.
Oh, okay. Well, I was like, if you're on YouTube, you can see that two of us came dressed for the concert.
I
Or-
swear to you,
And then one of us has a prop. Wait, what's that behind you, Chris? Is that not a ghost face? But no, that's not. That's something else.
this
No, the little
No.
white guy, the white face
Yeah.
behind you. He has a lot of cool toys. You guys should watch.
that's Billy the puppet. Oh, I do
Oh.
actually. Hang on, here. Look.
I was like, it's
Keep
so
talking.
small, I
I've
can't
got
fully
a
see
ghost
it.
face over here.
I thought about dressing up as in my Ghostface costume, but I figured that was taking it a step too far.
No, I was kind of going to order one and put Archie in the mask, my dog Archie in the mask for like the intro and the outro, but it wasn't going to get here in time because I thought of it too late. All right, so we all came moderately prepared.
I do have the jacket like in the closet next to me if you want me
Right. Like, and that's what I'm saying. Like we all it's not just that we like this movie. We take it to another level. We have stuff from the movie. We continue to stick with this franchise now going into its seventh movie, even though arguably there are some misses in the pile.
No, it's not. You're wrong, and I will not hear any such opinions.
Uh-huh.
There is no bad Scream movie.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a bad movie, but I would say that I don't feel that all of them hold up to the standards of the original trilogy. And I do want to have this conversation, but I don't know. I feel like I want to have a few more points about regular Scream 1 first,
Yes.
so that everybody who's listening, if they don't fully know Scream or why we're interested in it, we can talk a little bit about it before we get into the like, why do we think it's the best one, if we all think it's the best one. I do want to go back to something that I was saying though, like as we were talking about the fear and the youth and the whatever that we were bringing to this movie, I'm curious how many of you think one of the reasons you connect to it is how humorous it is, how self-referential it is of the genre, of the fact that like it's not out to just terrify you.
Absolutely. And I will also say is like it's seemingly the only one of us who was a teenager when this movie came out. This movie about teenagers came out. First of all, like every movie about teenagers, I wanted to be so cool like Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard minus the murder stuff, because you always want to be the cool teenagers. But also in the same way, I would argue Clerk spoke to a certain generation of people, and like just the way a movie sounds like the way you and your friends talk. Like a lot of Scream was a lot of the way me and my friends that we referenced movies all the time. We quoted movies all the time. We, in our free time, we watched movies and were nerds about it. So like hearing people like that, it makes you feel more vulnerable because you dive deeper into the world. So then when those guys who are a lot like your friends start killing each other, it's not great.
Yeah, it's not great. Did any of you come to the movie because of a particular actor?
No, again, I was forced into it by
But still, like maybe I mean, you once you were forced into it, you said like, okay, they're hot, so at least maybe you were watching it differently because you were like suddenly interested in these actors. Because I will say, I do think that also, like, I was already such a big Friends fan that I was a big Courtney Cox fan. So coming into Scream, being like, I don't know if she's gonna die. I don't think she's gonna be the killer, but like, I want to watch her do something other than Monica.
Ironically,
Friends.
This is crazy. I saw Scream at my bedtime was 8 o'clock. So by the time I saw Scream, I had never watched Friends. Like I was allowed to watch Scream before I was allowed to watch Friends.
This is amazing.
Well, you weren't allowed to watch Scream. It sounded like you and your brother.
Right. There's that too.
Like, yeah. So like my parents had rules that like because we noticed very early on, especially around like that 7 or 8 age, that like if I did not get my requisite amount of sleep, I was a nightmare person. Like so like they were very strict about my bedtime. They were not strict about what I watched before that bedtime. So like Justin having Scream on all the time like didn't bother them, but they're like, no, you're not going to be up past 8. That's why I wasn't allowed to watch Dawson's Creek, another Kevin Williamson.
And I was gonna say, like,
in the first season.
Some of the things I had on my list were like, "What did you guys know about Wes Craven?" And I'm like, "Well, nothing, because we were all children, so we can't."
I knew plenty about Wes Craven at that point. Are you kidding me? Well, I was gonna say what like my initial like I watched Friends. I'd seen Friends, but I wasn't like I gotta tune in to watch Friends all the time. It just wasn't my show at that point or today. But I loved Party of Five. So Nev Campbell in a cool like teen horror movie was a big selling point for me. And then so I guess spoilers.
No.
The Drew Barrymore of it all.
Yes, I was gonna say
that she played an important role in the movie and that she was front and center on the poster. And this was really before most of the internet. So that even though I didn't see that until VHS, I was not spoiled.
Oh, that's impressive.
Which
because I will say that is such a thing that I think people just a little bit older than me, maybe your age, Chris, who were seeing the movie as teenagers, had already the knowledge of how horror movies work, of like, okay, there's going to be a big death in the opening scene, and okay, there's going to be a big star who's going to be a final girl. And because of the things that you were talking about, and I think this is where Dimension did a really good job with the marketing, like Drew Barrymore was arguably the biggest name that they had.
And they sort of marketed her as the final girl.
Yeah, they put her big face
Yeah.
on the poster, and then she's the one you see when the screen comes up, and you're like, uh-oh. And I didn't go into the movie knowing a lot of those tropes, but I did know who Drew Barrymore was, and I was like, they won't kill off such a big star right away, will you? And the fact that they did, I think, maybe ingratiated me to the movie more because of the fact that it was like, no, we've said this a few times, but like, no one's safe. Like, there is nothing safe here. And that death was just unlike anything I had ever seen. And I like the brutality of it, not just the like, let's drag her through the woods and like ultimately lynch her, but the fact that her mother picks up the phone and hears her daughter die. And
yes.
All of us being so young, one of the things I did want to talk about is like, this movie or any in the franchise, which is the death that you feel like has stuck with you the most through the years, whether that means you go back and rewatch it, or it means you can never watch it again?
I mean, I can rewatch all of them, period.
Okay. That's fair. I guess I just meant like the one that just emotionally sticks with you, that like, whether it is maybe because it is unlike something else, or just maybe the brutality of it, quite frankly, or the surprise of it.
I think that for me is two different things, because I think the emotional element of it is, again, I know it's not spoilers, but spoilers anyways. The Dewey of it all, I can't talk about it. I mean, I think I really like Scream 5, but that I can't speak when trying to watch that. Like, that's such a hard thing to think about because he had survived so much. Like, I would get emotional like when I rewatched that. But to me, the most, outside of like obviously Drew, I think the deaths that I think about that freak me out the most are the opening of Scream 2, weirdly enough. That movie, when everyone is surrounded by the fandom love, you think everything is fake. And like, first of all, the knife in the ear is so freaking creepy. It's so gross and so like well done. But then also like this woman is bleeding out in front of you on screen, like, and everyone thinks it's a joke, and then no one's taking care of her as she's dying in front of you because, again, you're so surrounded by the fandom of it all and just not believing in it. And that to me is so terrifying, that someone could be dying in front of you and you think it's part of the shtick.
Right, because I think that even in the movie, they say like everyone thought it was a publicity stunt.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but who would ever do that as a publicity stunt?
Also,
in the 90s, like, because I don't
think?
I mean, the Blair Witch people tried to convince you that these kids died in the woods somewhere.
Well, that was the movie. That was the whole point of the movie. But like, nobody was staging a death in the theater.
But I think in that like 90s horror, that was also still pre-Columbine, like Scream 2 was still pre-Columbine. That like, we're looking at it now, like, oh my God, no. But like in the 90s, yeah, like I could see it. I agree. I have two also. I think when someone says like, what is like the Scream death, for me it's Randy in the van. And also the fact that like that took place in the middle of the day. That was like,
yes,
what? But when I like, the one that sticks with me the most is Omar Epps with his face against the bathroom door, and I was like, he just heard humming. Like, it's a perfectly rational. So I think, yeah, that knife to the ear through the bathroom door was,
is it rational to like be eavesdropping weird shit that's happening in the stall next to you? I don't know.
Let people get their freak on without trying to butt your nose into it, guy.
I will say, and this is just years later, I became obsessed with The Sweetest Thing, and they had this whole bit in there about glory holes. And then like rewatching Scream 2 after watching The Sweetest Thing, I was like, I wonder if those writers thought about that. Like if that was part of the bit and then they tamed it down. Because in Scream 1, they tamed things down to get the R rating because otherwise they were going to be an MA. And I wonder if something similar happened in Scream 2 in that opening. But maybe that is just my own little twisted brain.
Wait, wasn't that a thing in Scary Movie where they had?
It also wasn't, because Scary Movie just like took everything to the extreme, the parody. Everything in that movie was insane. But I always thought maybe it was actually supposed to be part of the original Scream 2 opening because it's also college and they're amping it up. They're like, we're older now, things are different. I don't know. I will agree with you, Meg. I do think for me, when I think about the death that has stuck with me, it is Randy, is because I didn't want him to die. I wanted him to be the one with Sydney that like always made it through. And so for me, it stuck with me more because I didn't want to lose the character, less so than like the way he was killed. And then I will also say that the way when I think about the way they were killed, what has stuck with me, it used to be Jada Pinkett Smith in Scream 2, and it has become Dewey in Scream 5 because Dewey was the character that went through so much, as Marissa said, and like I mean, it was a running joke, like how much he survived and the fact that he probably should have been dead by now.
He's
but
probably still alive. Let's be honest.
but here's the thing. He better be, because who took him out was not worthy. And that's why it sticks with me, because I was so angry at Scream 5. And that goes into the like, this is the one that I don't, it's not the only one I think doesn't fully hold up, but it is the one that I think I have maybe some of the most problems with as they were trying to reset. And if I was just very mad at who ended up being the one to take him out.
I do want to, before we get completely off the topic, I want to go back to the Jada of it all. I'm glad you brought that up, Marissa. There is like, to me, I can watch that scene and be like, oh, a film student is the killer this time. There is something musical about the way Ghostface moves as he follows Jada down the aisle, slicing away at her with these big elaborate swings of the knife and then the way she dies on stage crying as the audience realizes something is going on, and she's backlit and so perfectly, like the way that was shot is so good. I agree that the Dewey death is emotional. It hurts. I will forever love that scene because the last thing Dewey hears was, "It's been an honor," as he bleeds out all over.
Okay. I will
like that was
give you
such
that.
that would like love or hate Mikey Madison and Jack Quaid.
See, that's it. I thought Jack did a great job. I didn't like Mikey's character at all.
Oh, I just thought
It's
they were
just like
both Reddit
if
dorks.
Jack's character had killed him, I would have been a little bit more forgiving. And I think a lot of it goes into, I thought she was just way too obvious as the killer, but I also just didn't think there were just things that I was like, when I look at her on screen, I'm like, you shouldn't be able to do that. You are a very slight person. And so I just had a believability issue with it. I don't know.
That's fair.
I have a lot of issues with Scream 5. I have a lot of issues with the newer Screams in general.
I have a lot of issues with how they did Deputy Judy.
You mean her death or just the character in general?
Just no, that she's not around anymore. I liked her.
Okay.
Fine, take her kid.
I mean, like,
I
we
don't
also
need
have
more Dylan Minnette.
That did just remind me that Dylan Minnette, like, his death is very, like, similar to the Omar Epps situation with the knife through the door. Like,
oh, yeah.
He gets in the eye rather than the ear, but it's like...
This is what I find interesting about these later Screams and the killers, the Ghostface in Screams, because they have been influenced by Stab, right? So like in Scream, the very first Scream, we find out later, Billy and Stu were influenced by Roman, who is a up and coming director and Sydney's secret half brother, etc.
He's the director of Stab 3.
Right, but at that point, like when he's influencing Billy and Stu, Stab doesn't exist.
No, Stab doesn't exist anymore
because of Billy and Stu. So they make this movie.
Scream is Roman's movie.
Right, and they make this movie franchise within the franchise, and so then all of the Ghostface who come after Billy and Stu theoretically could be reading the real news about Billy and Stu, and then later Mrs. Loomis, and Mickey, who is again a terrible killer, and then Roman. But more likely, and they reference in the films, they are influenced by the stabs, which are already taking liberties and already not necessarily like what really happened in Scream. So then you get to something like Scream 5, Dylan Minnette's death. He played Deputy Judy's son, whose name is Wes, I think. I can't remember. I just call him Dylan Minnette.
Deputy Wes.
Sure. And so that death could have been an on-purpose mimic of something that they saw in the movie that came before because it happened in real life. It's like this weird wormhole that I go down when I watch these movies of like how much of this is an intentional homage from the character, how much of this is just an intentional homage from the movie.
Well, yeah, because am I wrong in remembering Scream? God, these numbers. Scream 5, the killers, aren't they mad about like Stab 7?
Yeah, because Stab went off the rails. Like only the first few stabs were actually based on what happened. Then they started expanding the franchise with fictional things, including time travel, because Sydney threatened to sue them. And so they get really upset. This is the Mikey Madison and Jack Quaid duo. They are basically like, yeah, and they're basically like, the fans, we want to give this back to the fans, which I'm sorry, but they want to kill Sydney, and like no fans win if Sydney loses. So like, where are you even coming from, you insane children? But effectively, yes, they want, and there is a tie to Billy that they find, and because he has a secret daughter, and they grew up with her, and then like Mikey's parents, I don't remember her character's name, but Mikey's parents bought Stu Macher's house, so like she's obsessive in a different way.
I completely forgot that Billy Loomis was that girl's dad.
Sam's dad, played by Melissa Barrera, not Mikey Madison.
Oh, I forgot how dumb that was.
So it ties all the way
not Mikey
back.
Madison, Sam.
Yeah. So it like they are that, and that's part of why I got so annoyed with this like let's reset everything with Scream 5 and beyond because of that tie. I was like, not that it couldn't happen. It could certainly happen. He could have had a kid in high school. That happens all the time. It just felt, if you're going to do that, I wanted you to do more than what you did with it. And to tack that piece onto their more concern about the fandom, it got muddy for me. And I was like, I think those are two separate things, and they could have been for two separate killers.
I'm fine with them bringing that wrinkle to Billy's story in. I just find it hard to believe that nobody knew for like, what, 20 years?
No, but they did know. Because Mikey says that at one point. She's like, your mom's a drunk. Of course we all knew. Like they knew at a certain point.
I don't recall.
And Sam ran because Sam was like so in her head about like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm the child of a serial killer. And also like my dad left because he thought he was my dad and he found out he wasn't. And I don't want to hurt my sister.
No, I don't even mean people outside of that circle. I like, how does Sydney not ever find out that her boyfriend had a kid?
Maybe, I don't think Billy found out. Because Billy died.
Yeah.
Well, but
that's the thing, is that like she was like
I need a timeline for this. So now,
I hear you on that.
Murderer, Billy is also an adulterer. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I mean, they were in high school, and he was plotting her death. So
I didn't get the impression that he
was also trying to sleep with her.
I got the impression,
and she wasn't putting out, so the high school boy cheated on her.
That doesn't make it okay.
Would. Like, this is the fact that he was trying to kill her is not too bad, but the idea that Billy Loomis would cheat is like beyond the pale.
But I'm not even saying that. I thought that he had
nonsense. Don't put words in my mouth.
I thought he was.
I'm saying I'm just surprised she didn't find out at some point.
This timeline overlaps. I could be wrong.
I believe that they explained that she was like very recently pregnant when the murders happened. And so when it came out that she kept it on the DL that it was his kid.
Yeah. Because she was the cheater. She was dating the guy who thought he was Sam's dad in high school. She cheated on him with Billy, got pregnant, told that other guy it was his. So
not morally good people. I think
I'm sure it's muddy. And P.S., like, I secretly hope she's the killer in Scream 7. We've never met this mother, but like, if you go by the pattern and you look at like how that always goes back to like the family and like the person you've never seen or didn't know about or whatever. Like, I would like to, I don't know why she'd be the killer now, but like, I would love it if she would. I was like, why haven't we met her?
Wait,
Her
I
children
assume
have been
Jack
targeted
Quaid
multiple times.
no, do you want my Scream 7 theory? Because like they have been following that it's like a super fan trying to recreate the movies. Billy and Stu were trying to like we're like capitalizing off of like the 90s obsession with like killer fame, etc. Like that tracked. And then the second movie was Jack Quaid's family getting revenge, like Billy's mom
Like
getting
Billy's
revenge
mom,
in
exactly.
the second one.
Exactly.
So for the seventh one, Stu lived, had a prodigal kid in college or like in prison, whatever, like conjugal kid.
But we did
prodigal.
the Billy Secret Kid. I feel like because they did the Billy Secret Kid, they can't do the Stu Secret Kid.
But I think it's different circumstances. That Stu has some kind, or they make it one of the like they can make it one of the twins, Mason and what's her face.
No, leave them alone.
I mean, I think it would be like
it has
make
to be
Sydney the killer.
It
Let's
has to be
go.
a Stu a Stu
I said that
relative.
once.
I don't think Sydney's going to be the killer just because of the amount of work they had to do to get her into the movie.
Oh, no. And that like would destroy the franchise. But I did say that once that like back in the day, I think I said this before Scream 4, what I wanted for Scream 4, because it was so much time after the trilogy anyway, I wanted it to be Sydney and that she was like disassociating and that sometimes we would see Ghostface chasing her, but then when there was the reveal, we would see that there's no one there, that she is Ghostface and she thinks that somebody is still chasing her, and the people that she's killing, she thinks she's killing in self-defense, but she's not.
I like that.
Yeah, they can't do that now.
But I think 7 is going to be a relative of Stu.
Yeah, that would be
great. And they are jealous that Sam got all of the fame for being Billy's kid, and like Stu never got so that it mirrors the Roman situation. Who was jealous of Sydney.
I think they set that up really well in Scream 5 and Scream 6 anyway, because in Scream 5, when they talk about who is the killer, there are comments like, what about, and Stu, like everyone forgets Stu. And then in Scream 6, they kill his nephew. I think it's his nephew. I'm not sure about the math on that. It's like his mom's sister's, his cousin, his mom's sister's son. They're like dirtbag that they kill behind the bar.
Oh, wait.
Was that 6 or 7? And that might have been, I'm sorry, 5 or 6.
I realized the siblings are Randy's niece and nephew.
Yeah, those are they're meat.
Okay. Yeah, but
I would also say the reason I don't think that'll happen is because I think they will avoid at all costs mentioning the character of Sam. Because I think they're trying to fully move away from that whole.
Wait, isn't she back though?
No, but you can't avoid her because Jenna Ortega's back and their sister.
Jenna Ortega's not back.
She's not?
No, Jenna Ortega bowed out. Jenna Ortega bowed out months ago because of Wednesday.
Yeah.
She said
they're not going to mention either of them. See, I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of thought the Jenna Ortega bowing out in the press was a lie, like a leak, so that when she shows up and maybe is killed is a surprise.
I mean, that's entirely possible, but like that, the story has been that she is too busy with Wednesday filming and.
I just don't know how you avoid talking about them at all when they were the center of the last 2 movies. Like, that's very bizarre.
And I think that's why it's important that Neve is back, and also Kevin Williamson is
sure.
And I also
feel like we'll take it back to the like original. Are you raising your hand? Just you have to be louder. The mic will.
Go ahead, Marissa.
And the camera will cut to you.
I was just going to say, well, it's 2 things. First of all, they wiped the slate clean with a lot of 4, like with between 4 and 5. So it's like, it makes sense if there's another extended period of time that they would kind of ignore a lot of what we saw, especially since Nev wasn't there in the last film. But also the interesting X factor of this all is that in theory, potentially Patrick Dempsey might be coming back because it seems like his character are married to the family, and I mean, I don't want them to make another freaking love interest of hers a killer, but at the same time, B, in Scream 3, for like half of the scenes, he's playing it like he's the killer.
Yeah.
So
hey, what's your favorite scary movie, detective? My life. Come on, McDreamy. What are you doing?
I think that there was scripts, I think very much like in Stab, where there were different scripts. I
Yeah.
think
Oh,
that's what was
100%.
happening. And I think like they were being told, like, play it like you might be, because we're not sure how we're going to end it yet.
Right. And like I don't want them to undo it to like Roman had help the entire time and he's
Oh,
actually
no.
I don't want that's not what I'm asking for universe. That being said, if they are bringing him back and if I'm curious what they do with that thread because that's an interesting thing to bring back
They kill him.
if they kill him or if I mean
How do you get to Sydney if you couldn't get to her last time and you want to get to her? You threaten her family. And who does she have? She has children who I think are too young to threaten because they're not as old as Randy's niece and nephew, because she was pushing one in a stroller in 5. So at least one of them is still kind of young. And then, her dad is probably, no offense, actor, dead, because he was an older gentleman in 1996. And he was not a famous actor that I feel like they would feel the need to bring back. And if you did bring him back, I don't know that any of us would recognize him. So, like, I think, who do you kill? You go after Mark, because she said, like, they're together. She said it in the last
Unless she met someone else named Mark.
Oh, that would be so sad. And
Wouldn't
like,
that be hilarious?
no, I would be very mad about it.
they also like did not indicate in 4 as far as I recall that they were together so like did they reconnect?
Yeah, I was gonna say they might not have been the whole time, because
But yeah.
again, the kids are young, and so like I was doing the math on like Sydney's kids seem very young, but Randy's younger sister has teenagers already, and like again, that's fine. People have children at different ages, but I was actively trying to figure out how old Sydney's kids were, because she makes the one offhanded comment in 5 about like the girls in school, and I'm like, what school? Like, how old are you? Can they be the killer? Is it their friend group that will be targeted? At what point in life will we get to that storyline?
I mean, could be given how many years it's been since all these things. Like we don't know. It's possible that she has, kids of different ages. Maybe that youngest kid was a surprise.
I mean, honestly, maybe Roman has kids out there. Maybe there's cousins floating around. I wanna
I
I
actually have a theory for part 7 though.
Okay.
It's Gale Weathers.
It can't be.
It
They toyed with that
can.
last time though.
Sydney has ruined her life. This killer's
No,
obsession with
are you
Sydney
serious?
Prescott has ruined Gale's life.
Sydney made Gail's life. She would not have had any of those books. She would
Think
not
of
have
how
had
many
any of
times
those
she's
shows.
been near death, and also now after the fact,
But
like
fame is better than death than like.
yeah. But think about the
healthy
books she's
living.
gonna write from prison.
I'm so sorry. Gail cannot Taylor Swift her way out of this. This is not a narrative I never wanted to be part of for Gail, because
Yeah.
she had several voluntary inserts into the narrative that did not need to be there. She didn't want to be part of it.
She would
100%.
have she wouldn't even know any of this death and
She-
yeah, but that was before Dewey got ripped in half by a girl with a knife.
Yeah, but then in 6,
The only person
on the
she
phone
ever
with the
loved.
killer, and he points out like you would have made a good killer, but she's already moved on past Dewey. Like, I just feel like they would have done that. They would have done it last year, or last movie rather.
I'm ready.
Well,
I'm ready for
I'm
Gail
not
to
saying
come up
I
with a
wouldn't have
local-
wanted it. I just think it's too late. Like, I would have wanted that for 6. Like, let's try to make her relevant again. They made that joke to her so many times that like it's too late to do it, because you already referenced that she should have done that by now.
I mean, I do think that in 6 they could not do it. I think that was one of the only films where they actually could not do it because they had already killed off David and Dewey. And if Nev isn't coming back, she is the only thing. So if you completely sever that tie, that's why I was like,
Well, that's the
when we were
question.
talking about theater, I was like,
Yeah, because at a certain point, Heather Matarazzo becomes the only legacy Scream character.
But at a certain point, do they care?
I think so.
But that's what I'm curious about, because like the modern audiences, the Jenna Ortega fans don't care. These are just old people to them. But like those of us who have been around from the beginning, we have the attachment. And like, yes, there's no Halloween without Jamie Lee Curtis, but we're proving that we can kill off these characters one by one, and the franchise still exists in this franchise. So I do wonder if, not with Kevin back, but like if in a certain world, if they would ever consider it, like if they couldn't get these people back. I mean, Courtney Cox is like 60 years old. If I were her, I wouldn't want to be like fake being thrown around and stabbed a million times anymore.
From a film studio perspective, it is in their best interest to somehow transition
Hmm.
this. Like, I think
They
again,
tried.
before the Melissa and Jenna dropout, I think they were hoping that like that could be the new linchpin, because if you can only have a Scream movie dependent on whether you can negotiate Nev Campbell's contract enough to get her to come back and do this again, like
Mhm.
the runway gets significantly shorter than I think the original plan was to try and weed out those original characters and then have Jenna and Melissa take it.
Yeah. They did not, nobody knew Jenna Ortega was going to become the person of the moment. Uh, and if that wouldn't have happened, Nev Campbell wouldn't be coming back. And I know that sucks because I love Sidney Prescott and like that's just sounds so gross, but that's also how these things work. If they had their bankable hot new star
Yeah.
still, they wouldn't have to look backwards and they wouldn't because
But
it would say
also, I will be honest, I love her too, obviously, but I would also love this story to move on from Sydney so that I can imagine the character of Sydney get some peace. Like, I
What are you talking
understand.
about? She lives in Seattle and has a kid that she
Does
takes out
she?
on a
I'm still not
stroller.
Yeah,
quite
and
sure.
every 5 to 10 years, another serial killer comes out of the woodworks trying to kill her family and friends out of some perceived injustice that
Yeah,
she
Mhm.
did to them by existing.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's like a high school
Yeah.
reunion.
Oh, that's a movie
Ooh.
I would watch. Like
I,
all the nobodies that were in Woodsboro High class of whatever class they were.
But also the ghosts of the people
main
who
guy is
died. So we got like Steve, the football boyfriend,
I don't
Tatum's
love
ghost.
when they do the anti-aging work
oh,
to see the ghosts. I'm gonna be on like Skeet looked weird. And he doesn't even look old, I think, when you see him normally, but they did something to his face to smooth his face out.
Yeah.
He looked
They
like
should have used
wearing
makeup.
pancake mix. Well,
Say
that's what it
you
looks like to
say
me.
you didn't watch Riverdale without saying you didn't watch Riverdale, Danielle. Was
I didn't
the
finish Riverdale. Absolutely
Skeet
not.
doesn't
No.
look older?
Well, I didn't say he didn't look older. I said he didn't look old. Like, of course he doesn't look
Again.
19. He doesn't look 16, but he didn't look like 60. You know what I mean? You could have met
Okay.
in the middle with makeup, I think.
I
I don't
feel
know.
like
I
he's
don't love the
aging the
digital.
same way Jeffrey Dean Morgan is, where it's like he's
Mm.
obviously older, but wears it well.
Hmm. And I will also say, I think part of this is my like I'm so anti AI, and I like there is also a part of me that because they're playing with the anti aging in the movies, and because all these screams have adjusted to the technology of the time, I feel like there's going to be a big AI element in Seven, and I don't know what it will be. But I like if you guys remember in
Wait,
do you remember
I
in
don't
three though?
understand.
Okay, I don't know what it would be. I'm gonna just off the top of my head spitball something because in Scream 3, it was the first time they used the new technology to change the voice to sound like someone's voice that you know, and that's how they like got Cotton in the beginning, right? And so to me, the evolution of that is in 7 doing something with AI and like FaceTime or something with AI and social media to trick people and to have the killer use that to get them. And I just don't like the idea of let's all keep incorporating AI. Now, granted, this would be a way of saying like this is why it's bad, but I'm still just like I feel like they're going to do something with it and I'm going to be mad when they do.
I think you're right, but for a different reason. Uh, I think Scream tries to shoehorn in the hottest, latest tech and sometimes in hilariously bad
Mm.
ways, like in 4, the one which Meg hasn't seen, and what's his face from Jericho, like life casts. He has like a lot, he has like
Oh,
a
yeah,
camera
yeah.
stuck to his head. He's like, I'm online recording live 24 hours a
Because the
day.
killers are
This is
making their
how
own
the
movie.
future's gonna be. And it wasn't. That was popular for like a day and a half. And it just so happened to be the day and a half they were writing the script for that movie.
But it also it spoke to the point of like the killers are making their own movie, which
Mhm.
is something they've kept the thread through of like all of these killers are still trying to get fame. They're still trying to tell their own version of this story. Even like Richie in Scream 6 when they did the reveal in that like theater with all of the memorabilia and Dermot Mulroney is chewing the scenery and saying my son even made his own movies. In my head, I was like, did you help him make snuff films that we haven't seen? I don't think that's what it was, but
Could
like
be.
this is something that like his is now in their zeitgeist, the way that like we talk about Scream, like Stab is their version of Scream. So like they all want to mistakenly emulate the killers. So I can't imagine I don't know, I can't imagine that wouldn't still be around in some way. And like I honestly thought after that live casting in Scream 4, if they hadn't failed at that in Scream 4, they would have done like it's streaming live on Snapchat or something in Scream 5.
I mean,
Probably.
it's interesting. I mean, there are so much technology. The problem with using technology in films and stories is that technology does evolve so fast that like to Chris's point, it can look so dated so fast as well. Um, I Now that you mention it, Danielle, it is absolutely possible that they will utilize deep fakes as as a tool, either to frame someone or
Mm.
Ooh,
a way to kind of lure someone out to be like, we have your loved one, look at us. And and we're seeing in these days, people, it's not just photos. You can do videos where it's horrifying. As someone who spends too much time thinking about the toll this is taking on our society, it's terrifying, but that you're probably right. I mean, the, I have more faith in Kevin writing the story, and I'm hopeful Kevin will tell a good story, but you are absolutely right there. It is very possible that we are about to see something that's going to be like, oh,
Well, I also think
hey,
that they've teased, I mean, even, Scream 6, like no, I'm sorry, Scream 5. I'm gonna mix up these newer ones because I don't like them. But Scream 5, that's how the killers ultimately lured Jenna Ortega's character. Like they showed her this video of Mikey Madison's character, and the killer was like, "I'm outside with a knife." Now, granted, that was later, I think very clearly proven to be like something they shot, and it was not live because she
right.
was one of the killers. But it was very much use exactly what you said. We're using your loved ones. And also, that's exactly how they got Sam back anyway. Like Jenna Ortega didn't die in the opening of Scream 5 because they needed her alive to get Sam back. I don't know that Sam would have come back for a funeral, but she came back because her sister was a mess and her mom was off on a quote business trip, the way that Sydney's dad was off on a quote business trip in Scream 1. And I was like, you guys, stop using the same things. But I feel like
I mean,
that
business
has
trips do
to be.
happen.
What'd you say?
Business
Allegedly.
trips do happen on a
Yeah, and
fairly
then
regular basis.
yes, but when your daughter almost gets stabbed to death, you end that business trip and you come home.
You would
Oh
think
man, flights are expensive.
That's
Unless you're also plotting, you're at serial killer boot camp because you're planning to kill people in a later movie.
that, but also they did make a point to be like, it was only 3 days. The course of Scream 5 was like 3 days long. And I was like, maybe she, like, by the time she got the news and by the time she booked the flight, maybe she was sort of on her way back. It just
Yeah,
wrapped up
maybe she has her
faster.
own movie that's like the mom story in Home Alone, where she's like in the back of like a truck with a bunch of polka singers or something.
You never
You
know.
know,
Murdering her way across the
little
Atlantic.
digital exclusive.
Um,
I also want to say that, like, because it's Kevin that's back, and also, like, the guys that wrote 5 and 6 are such writers, like, they're clearly such big fans of these movies that I feel like if they did use AI, I kind of feel like it would be in like an anti-AI way.
mm,
You know what I mean? As like a commentary of like, we didn't want we like all of these previous killers are like AI versions of what
mm,
they're, you know what I mean? And they are coming in it to be original because they're like, they did it because like someone put in who should be the next stab killer into Chat GPT. You know what I mean? I just feel like
yeah.
it would be like AI's in there, but maybe in tongue in cheek because like no one hates AI more than writers.
I will say
That's true.
Kevin Williamson was someone who I definitely saw and spoke to on picket line. So it's not like he is someone who is
No,
a
I wouldn't think that this would be in any sort of like ad campaign for it, but just having it in the story in general, I'm kind of already like tense. And again, no one said this is definitely happening. This is just something that I assumed. So
yeah.
we've been talking a lot of like, we've just been jumping around to the different movies and everything and
Yeah,
talking a
I'm
lot
sorry for
about,
the very detailed
no,
plan
no,
you
no.
had set up for this
I
conversation.
didn't have a detailed plan. I was gonna try to do it more chronologically, but like who cares? At this point though, especially hearing you guys talk about how you came to these movies, like not everybody does come to them chronologically. I am sure there are people who came to 5 and 6 because they were fans of those actors that didn't see the originals because that was, before they were born.
The new
So
generation, man.
but I want us to look at the franchise overall, and we kind of already touched on this, but I asked about like the kill that sticks with you. I want to ask who you think the best Ghostface was. And I say best, and I want to set this up as my definition of best is most successful in number of kills, maybe, but also in the planning in general, like the way that like and maybe even the motive that they had being just interesting.
I know this is an easy answer for me. I can go. I'll go first if that'll help.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
It's Roman in part 3. He's the only one who acted alone.
Agreed.
100%.
He everyone else had had to have a team to get this done. He was out there just butchering starlets left and right and blowing up houses.
Well, the reason I ask this is I do think everyone's reason will be slightly different, because I do agree that it's Roman, but I think that the reason I like Roman the best is because of what he convinced me was true about the first one. Like the fact that I said earlier, I watched this movie at Scream 1, and these two high school boys, one of whom is unhinged. Stu is unhinged in a way that is not
His tongue is out for 75% of the movie.
Right. And he's like funny and goofy, but it's not conducive to carrying out murders and getting away with them. So then to find out
I refuse to believe Stu could get through a kill without making some sort of joke and going,
right. And, we didn't hear any of that in any of those crime scenes we watched. But then to go to hear Roman say, I showed them, like I told them what to do. And it seems kind of clear that when you look back, okay, Billy was the one that said, you have to have a partner. You have to have an alibi, the way that he dropped his phone on purpose in Sydney's room to get caught by the cops, to then kind of prove it couldn't have been him, but then also to have a fall guy in her dad that they had kidnapped. All of that came from Roman. And so I'm he was masterminding so much beyond his own kills. And then when he got to his own kills, yes, he was the only one that did it solo. And if I'm to be totally honest with you, when he wanted to go after the studio head, I was like, that is one kill I'm behind. That is a vengeful death. That man, this was pre-Me Too, but yes, he ruined Sydney's mother's life. That's Roman's mother's life. He deserved it. And so to me, I was like, there's all of these little check marks, and even one death that I think should have happened, you win.
And the odd thing of it all is I feel like people disparage Scream 3 a lot, and I hate that.
By the way,
if you go via the retcon that they do in that movie, literally all of this happens because of Roman. Everything, right on through to whatever's going to happen in 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's all because Roman was a sad little boy.
And it's fascinating because he also, this sounds so weird to praise a serial killer, because not condoning this in real life, guys.
Marisa loves serial killers. We got it.
But also, he weirdly had patience and didn't have an ego, because he could have given, obviously they retconned it with Scream 3. But at the same time, with that knowledge of what we know from Scream 3, he didn't cause mayhem in Scream 2 when someone else was doing things outside of his control. He didn't be like, what the hell, guys? This was my plan. He saw them doing things and was like, what? I'm gonna let you do what you're gonna do, and I'm gonna have my plan play out when I play out. He is, again, sounds so weird, is the smartest, most organized killer they have. And yeah, he also was directing a movie, not saying it was a good movie, but he was busy. He got his kills down. He was masked he had control over everything. And yes, he obviously did not survive his thing, because you can't have him survive, but there's no killer that was as in control of everything as he was. And it's impressive considering he really only had himself to lean on.
Mm-hmm.
He was so in control, he managed to get himself hired as the director of a stab movie, for crying out loud. That is some deep planning.
Yeah, but that studio exec also owed him. You know what I mean? There,
sure,
there was some shady back
it's just
deals
it's hilarious. It's just every step of his journey is fascinating to me. I just rewatched Scream 3 yesterday, by the way.
In prep for this, or just for fun?
A little bit of both, we'll say.
Okay.
I just
Wait,
wanted
Meg,
to watch it.
Meg, do you have a wild card pick?
No, well, like, here's the thing. When you ask the question, my just gut instinct was like, it's Billy. It's Billy. But then as you started talking, I was like, yeah, Billy doesn't exist without Roman. So then that does, like, I've just been convinced otherwise. I think, like, when it comes to not necessarily, you were asking, like, logistically within the universe, and then yes, Roman makes sense. If you talk about, like, within the movies, the best reveal, the biggest impact, then no one's ever gonna top Billy. I think that.
I don't think you can't say that. Like, I don't think it had
Yeah.
to be logistically across movies. I guess I meant logistically in the story, which yes, if you hadn't seen Scream 3, logistically in Scream 1, that is crazy. Like that reveal, like he faked his own death again to convince her that it could never possibly be him. And then it was him.
Yeah. It was so good, guys.
You know who the real victim of this franchise is? Cotton Weary. Man.
No, he's an ass. Like he didn't deserve.
Oh my God. What
like,
if the next killer is like a secret child of Cotton Weary's?
that
Cotton-
actually
Like, also justifiably to be pissed.
100%. Yeah.
We've pitched so many fake children, and I just want to go back to me saying that a fake child of Stu got, like, completely lambasted here, but now we're on, like,
I didn't
so
lambast
many
it.
people have secret children, and I was like, hold on, why can't Stu have if Cotton Weary can have secret kids, Stu can have secret kids.
I didn't say Stu couldn't have secret kids. I just said because they did the Billy secret kid already, it would be like too similar, I think. I'm not saying that Cotton having a secret kid wouldn't also be similar, but like when they did Scream 5 and they had those quotes in the movie about like who's the killer of Stab, and they all said Billy and they went and Stu, I was waiting for Stu's secret kid to be the killer of Scream 5, and then that never happened. And so now it just goes back to my whole like I think it's too late to ring that bell or whatever.
But I will say they do it again in Scream 6 when they're in the museum. Emmy said, I can't remember her name. The smart girl
That
sibling.
one?
6.
No, 6.
Last
Yes.
one is 6.
Yeah, 6.
But the killer, the dead killer.
No.
Oh.
The Mason Gooding sister, the one
okay.
from
Yeah.
she's talking to Hayden Panettiere, and they're looking at the TV that falls on Stu, and they're like, "That's the TV that falls on Stu," and they're like, "That's crazy," and she's like, "Yeah, if you believe that Stu is dead."
Right, but then the TV
I
does
forgot
fall
about
and kill
Kirby.
someone in that movie to kind of prove like, yeah, it can kill somebody.
Yeah, it could, but why say if you believe that Stu is
I
dead?
will
just
say-
because I feel like that's why they did that, to be like, we're putting this to bed now. We're saying it, we're acknowledging your theory, and then we're using the TV to kill someone else to say you're wrong.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to bring it up. I talked to Matthew Lillard this weekend about how he wants to come back to Scream.
Yes, he keeps saying
well,
Stu
first
is
of all,
not dead.
I asked him who he's playing in Scream 7 or how he's coming back for Scream 7, and he said, I'm not, but if I was, I would give you that same answer. And then told me he wants to come back. He wants Stu to be discovered and now be like a super roided out older guy because he wants to do that.
But he would still be in jail, right? Like he's roided out because he was in jail.
I mean, probably.
Because it's how many? It's coming out in 2026, so it'll be 40 years. No, I can't do math. It'll be 30 years.
Don't do that.
Wow, you guys.
What are you doing to us right now?
I had 30 in my head initially, and then I was like, that seems like not enough. But no,
I will say something I think that the last movie does is set up the idea with the museum and how that family was so obsessed with the killings and all. I think there could be, look, and if this is okay, this might have almost ruined Halloween, but like the cult of Ghostface is this idea that I've thought about here and there where like, what if Stu isn't in jail because everyone thinks Stu's dead, but he's not. And he's been kept alive all these years by the cult of Ghostface.
I mean, look, Danielle and I did cover The Following.
I was just going to say, do you remember The Following and how obsessive I was about the cult of Joe Carroll? Like, yes. I think if The Following had been more successful, I don't think Kevin could replicate that. But I think because it only got 2 seasons and it was years ago, like what, 10, 12 years ago now, I think you could do that in a new Scream movie.
I think you have to, because like going back to like, how did Sydney not know that Billy had a secret kid? They could plausibly, but like the idea that Stu is alive and in prison somewhere and Sydney doesn't know about it is
We don't know that
nuts.
she doesn't know about it.
My thought is you can only
But
have
also, why would she know? If he's locked up somewhere, he's not a threat to her.
She
If
would
there
know
was
he's
no
alive.
trial,
But like
now here's the thing: why was there no trial?
I mean, yeah, my thing is there's no way in hell, in my opinion, that if he's alive, he's locked up. If he's alive, he got hidden away by someone who wanted to protect him and keep him away for whatever purposes. So he could be locked up as a hostage. It could be like a misery situation.
Mm,
I don't think it is a situation where he's alive and like sitting in a solitary cell somewhere. That being said, with all due respect to Matthew, please do not like let that death like that was such a cool like those are cool deaths, those are cool moments. Like I don't you can have him be like a twin. Like I'd rather like I'd
no,
literally
Well,
no
look, I mean,
twist.
he's in Scream 2.
ideas.
Yes, but not in the same way.
He has a cameo appearance in Scream 2. Yeah. I will be honest with you. Regardless, I do not expect that Stu would come back. It just doesn't seem like an idea that like, because once upon a time there was that plan that Stu survived, and that was something I think they were exploring it for 3 early on, maybe.
I mean, that would make
But then they
fine.
ultimately decided not to go down that road, and so they didn't go down that road for a reason. I can't imagine that reason's changed, and now it's 30 years later, so he's a 30 years older person,
Right.
who still sounds exactly like he did in that movie, a
Right.
stoned
But-
California teenager.
Right, but just to like go back to what I was saying earlier, the kids that are coming in, the new targets of whoever the Ghostface is, they're not Stu's age. There's no one left Stu's age beyond Gail and Sydney. Why
Maybe it's
was he
Gail
going
and
after
Sydney.
random kids? You know what I mean? Like, so if he was around, he couldn't still be Ghostface. And then my fear would be like, if it was like a hostage misery situation, is he then now a victim? Then like we have to feel bad for him because I don't.
Hey, now it's found. Got all these TV references I can pull out.
Found. Oh no, it is found.
Sorry, I can just do all these various things.
I mean, I'm not that I don't like that show. I just don't want this movie to become that show.
Right. It's a different thing.
Fair.
I don't know.
We also literally, yeah, it's a whole different thing. But also, I hate Scream 6 so much, guys. I hate it so much.
Do you?
Sorry.
Okay,
You hate
wait. Do
Scream
you
6?
hate it because of the killers?
Partially, but partially because almost every single thing about it was predictable. Like I went like it, and that is the first time I've ever felt that about a Scream movie. Like it is almost I haven't rewatched it since we saw it in the theaters together.
Okay, will say I did, and I still disliked it just as much. And I will also say, spoiler alert, Marissa and I went to see this movie together. We waited through the end credits, the only 2 people who did, because we heard there was like a little bonus. It was like a 30-second nothing. It's not on the streaming version.
Oh, interesting.
I don't
Because
remember what happens in
everyone
the-
probably realized like this isn't anything. We don't need this.
What was it?
It
I
was
don't remember.
Mindy making a joke about like the referentialness of I can't even remember what her line was, but it was literally like a one-line Mindy quote at the end of the credits that we sat through. The lights came on. The usher was like, "Why are you guys still here?" And we waited, and we were like, "Damn it!" Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just everything was predictable, and you haven't seen it since.
Yeah, no, and it is something where I have issues with 4, especially, but like for me, Scream 6 just felt like it was so predictable, and it felt like it was so much more a ripoff of Scream 2 than even Scream 5 was of Scream 1. Like it felt like there was so much of like there you could look at those 2 stories beat by beat and kind of say, okay, well, this is this is this
Yes.
is this, and it's like at what point, especially for people who are coming into this portion of the franchise without having seen the first 3 or 4 films, how much are you trying to pretend that this is original versus you're doing an intentional homage?
Yes.
And also, it was so obvious who the killers were. And it was also so obvious what their ties to Scream 5 were. And so I was just sitting there.
I will say, I don't know how the rest of you feel. I didn't think it was obvious what their ties were. I did think it was obvious that it was two of them. Quinn, I was like, once we didn't see her die, I was like, she's the killer. And then Dermot Mulroney, who keeps chewing the scenery. I was like, I love you, Dermot, but like you're doing too much. If you're again, it was like Mickey, it was like Timothy Oliphant in Scream 2. Like, if you're not the killer, you're doing too much. You are the killer. Like, this is big for big's sake.
I will say I thought Scream 5 was more predictable, but again, I'm going to admit my bias here that like everybody in this chat knows how I feel about Jack Quaid. So like when he got cast, I was like, he was the killer. And I remember I saw it with my best friend Lindsay McDonald, who everybody in this chat knows.
You
and
told me that.
And I saw it with Danielle. Like, I had Danielle on one side, I had Lindsay on the other. And Lindsay leans over to me like, everything. She's like, he's in this a lot. And I was like, babe, the killer has to be.
So I guess I will say that is a very interesting. It's kind of the Law and Order, like the biggest name guest star is usually the killer type of like way that we could watch this as being people who cover this industry. I didn't do that with that movie, so I didn't think it was as obvious for that reason.
Like,
now I want to go back and rewatch it with that in mind.
I think that way of looking at it's a little hit and miss, because like I think Roman doesn't stand out for that reason. Like, Roman, but on the flip side, it was very obvious very early on that Emma Roberts the killer in 4. Again, I like Scream 4. And again, I'll say this, I like all the Scream movies. This Scream 6 hate is sad. I love the opening. I feel like the opening of Scream 6 was one of maybe the best yet outside of Drew.
I did like the opening.
I thought that whole
Marissa's
shaking her head, which people who are listening to this cannot see. So
and she's also like doing the finger thing where like she's shushing us.
Because he's comparing it to 4, which is her least favorite. So
4 is. Here's the thing. I will say that I hated 4 the most for the longest time because I thought on paper it sounded great. I loved the idea of like how far you'd go for fame, but I didn't believe the killers could be the killers. I literally, when I first saw Scream 4 and saw the reveal, my note, and I did physically write this down, and I don't know if I still have it anywhere, but my note was, those kids look like the kids that would write notes to get out of PE. There's no way they could be strong enough. Like, that was my full note.
Now, there's something that I feel like needs to be brought up about 4, and that's how way ahead of the curve it was in terms of like the killers were the person who wants to be TikTok famous and the incel.
Thank you. I also thought he looked like an incel, and I was like, I'm so
and this was before,
it's the hair. It's definitely the thing.
And this is when social media was still in its infancy, and we didn't know what incels were because the world wasn't as terrible yet. But the fact that like you can watch, I mean, the world was terrible, but like that part of culture hadn't really moved into the mainstream at that point. So the fact that you could go see a movie like Scream 4 and like rewatching it now and be like, oh my God.
But I don't think that Emma Roberts' acting holds up. Like, I just don't think anything she did once the killer was revealed was believable.
Oh no, everything she did once the killer was revealed was like over the top,
right?
On soap.
But that to me ruined it for me because I on paper I loved the idea of that type of person being the killer. But then I was no, I don't believe you would have ever gotten your hands dirty. I
was way more annoyed with the way Dermot Mulroney acted after.
Well, I was too. And that's why I was like, Scream 4 was my least favorite for the longest time. And then along came Scream 6.
I will say I do love the opening of Scream 4. I think that's much
opening is really good,
with the different stabs.
For me, I hated the opening of Scream 6 because that was something that I actually predicted. Like, and Danielle's heard some of this after we got out of the theater. I was thinking like, how do you outdo what you've done before? And I was like, and so I had this thing. I'm like, oh, it's going to be this. And it's like, I don't want to, like, it's not me sitting around here for 20
It's not the movie's fault that you're trying to predict what the movie's going to do and you're right.
That's the thing. It's like
a little though. Because like
I should be able to see
it all should click and make sense when things are revealed. But if you can completely anticipate what's about to happen, sometimes the joy of seeing it happen is no longer there.
Hey, I think Marissa wants to finish her point.
I know, but she's not speaking over me. You need to just interject.
I'm talking. You guys are talking over
me.
No, so I will say to both of your points, to me, I think that is part of it. Like, one of the things that, I used to hear when I was covering Fringe was, the best reveal is something that in hindsight is completely obvious. They're laying out the groundwork. And then when you're hit with the moment, you're hit with the emotional impact versus them like surprising you out of nowhere. I'm not someone who's sitting here thinking for 20 hours before the Scream movie. Like, this is the most I've talked about Scream outside of like I talk with you guys, but like I'm not sitting here thinking about Scream 7 and what it could be. Like that's not as much as I love the franchise. Our day jobs require so much of us thinking about those show worlds. Like most of my theorizing is in the television world because that's my day to day. So like this was literally my thoughts as I was going to the theater to see Danielle. I'm like, okay, what would be different? And like this was in 5 minutes of thinking. If I'm figuring out everything that I was thinking in those 5 minutes, like that's not good that I figured out almost every single thing. We saw it opening day. Like it's not like I saw it and got 3 days later and had heard bits and pieces. I had heard nothing and still guessed up almost everything. I mean, I didn't know exactly who the killers were going to be, but as soon as you saw them on screen, it's like, okay, well, A, you look like Jack Quaid. And then it's also B, it's
Oh,
like, then you see Dermot and you're like, oh, then you see the acting and it's all the stuff. And it's just like,
I'm not here to
I
debate the merit of Scream 6. I'm saying I think the opening specifically is an
yeah.
all-timer for the franchise
I
because it's different. It bucks the tradition of like it the Scream it's the sixth movie in a line of movies that all have very, very, very similar beginnings.
Mm.
I saw Scream 6 at a press screening, and I remember when he takes his mask off being like, "Oh, this is cool." And then have him be the actual opening kill I was like, that's great. And then yes, I think everybody Dermot was obvious, which is also why I have hesitations about Patrick Dempsey being in the
Mm.
seventh one because I'm like, but that's just Dermot. Like,
I don't know. I liked the removal of the mask as well. And I actually would love to see them completely buck tradition and do a Scream where we know who the killer is partway through.
that I would have been completely,
At
that would
least
have been
one of them, not even if it's a duo or whatever.
I will
that.
say there was there it is something that hasn't happened a lot in slasher horror, and we haven't talked a lot about slasher horror history. I'm sorry for doing this. Movies where you know who the killer is from the jump, and instead of going from the victim point of view, you're going from the killer point of view. I love Sleepaway Camp Part 2, which
Mm.
is very much that sort of mode where like you're following Angela, the killer, spoilers, from the beat. She's the killer in the first movie.
Yeah, but these movies are old. You don't have to keep saying
Right.
spoilers.
You're following the killer from the killer's point of view as she is setting up traps and disposing of bodies and coming up with like excuses and whatnot. And it still is able to maintain the terror and almost do it a little bit more because the moment you see the killer in even a slightly awkward scene with a character that you've grown to like, you're like, oh, that's where this is going. So I think they could do a Scream where you have, if you don't fully know, like they
Mm.
actually heavily hint at who it could be. So that like when you at the end, you may not be like, oh my God, but you're like the whole movie, it just keeps that level of tension there.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think the fact that this is a franchise that has frequently had pairings makes it so you could more easily follow one and not know who the other person is and be like, as they're interacting with everyone, analyzing every single thing and being like, is there a beat too long? Is there something that you're trying to avoid their eye contact? Like there are so many ways to make it tense. But yeah, I
Yeah, I
figured
think
out.
if you go back and watch 5, you see that with like Mikey and Jack. Not necessarily successfully, but you see it. So I like that idea. I was originally going to ask you all to like kind of do a one thing you really want to see in Scream 7, but I feel like we kind of already touched on that. So I want to, if there's anything you want to throw out there, please do. I don't want to like not ask the question,
It's a
but
little
I
thing.
have a last question after this.
It's a little thing, but with Kevin Williamson back, I would really love them to name a character Wes for Wes Craven. Just the
Isn't
idea
that
of,
who Dylan Minnette was?
oh shit. Okay, someone who matters named Wes, I
That's
guess.
fair.
Someone who's not going to immediately be butchered. Like, I just like I love that Kevin's back. It kills me that Wes can't come back.
Yeah.
Because like the Scream A, obviously the franchise doesn't exist without him, but also like this subgenre of horror doesn't exist without him.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
he made a Freddy Krueger movie that everyone thought was super weird, and it kicked off an entire subgenre of movies that is still going 35 years later.
Yeah.
So
Anyone else want to throw in something for Scream 7?
I have a weird thing, and it's just because it's me. But it came to me as we were talking about Kevin being back. I was like, I would love to see James Vanderbeek just like pop up here somehow. It has nothing to do with Scream, but like I would just like to see James Vanderbeek, and I just think it would be a weird meta for very specific people, me and Marissa.
A lot of people. Joshua Jackson was in Scream 2, and then remember in Scream 5 when Jenna Ortega's watching Dawson's Creek, and I'm like, you just broke your own universe.
So we can bring Joshua Jackson back as his Scream 2 character.
He's not dead.
All I'm saying,
he's not
Megan was onto something.
Actually, along those lines, one of the things I wanted to always see, and I think I decided I want to see it now in Scream 7, because Scream 3 was so referential about Hollywood, and they were actually making a Stab movie. I want to see one of the actors in Stab get killed in Scream 7. So like
they're all dead.
This is an example. No. Like Tori Spelling played Sydney.
Oh,
so Tori Spelling is getting killed.
Oh, you want to kill Tori Spelling?
Or like, yeah, because there's such a good cast list, and to make it feel
Owen Wilson, right?
Real in our own world. Luke Wilson played Billy. Then Heather Graham obviously played Drew Barrymore's character, whose name I just blanked on. But then like
AC Becker.
There was like a hot second in Scream 5 where they're scrolling through the credits, and like Vince Vaughn, David Schwimmer, Alicia Silverstone, Craig Bierko were all listed. And I was like, not any one of them would be available to do this or interested to do this, but I think it would be cool. And I think it would also kind of ground this in a reality in a different way of like, famous actor is now murdered by Ghostface.
Anna Paquin.
Not.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know.
Those intros were Scream intros.
But like, was that Anna Paquin playing a character in Stab, or was that Anna Paquin playing an actor playing a character in Stab? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But you could bring her back anyway.
Wait, was Tori Spelling playing Tori Spelling in
Stab? No, Tori Spelling. Yes.
She was playing Tori Spelling playing Sidney Prescott.
Yes. Because they make that reference of like they'll probably get Tori Spelling to play me and Scream, and then in Scream 2 that's exactly what happened. So yes.
But she should let her do it.
I mean, I don't know. I just thought it would be, especially because I do like when you get really meta with Hollywood. All right. So I know I have to let you all go because we've been talking a very long time. As we leave everybody on the internet, I would like just to everybody make a very quick pitch for the most underappreciated character in any of the Screams, so that you can tell the people at home when you go and watch Scream, you're watching it because I love this person and you should too. Who would like to start?
You know what? I will start first. And I don't care if we've already talked about a lot, but I do think Roman is underrated because people hate Scream 3 so much that I think they do not appreciate everything that character is and has done. And so I will argue to you people who I know who agree with me, but still, I will still argue that Roman is underappreciated. Like, watch what Scott Foley does in that role and playing all of the aspects of it. Because again, as I think Chris said, he's a child at the end having like a trauma-filled temper tantrum. Like, he's been dealing with this his entire life, and he's doing so much in this role. And Roman weirdly is underappreciated. And guys, Scream 3 is good. I'm just saying that. This is the hill I will die on this franchise.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to follow Marissa because hello, Jennifer Jolie. Parker Posey in Scream 3 is so incredibly my shit. Her chemistry with Courtney Cox Arquette, like Cox now.
Well, I think
Arquette at the time. Is magnetic. I would watch the two of them do anything together. And like, I think it also speaks to the subtle genius of Scream 3, which is the dumbest thing I've ever said out loud. Um, it's a movie that satirizes Hollywood in so many different ways, but I think my favorite way is that it cast Parker Posey. Like Parker Posey was the actress of like the not the Julia Roberts level big blockbuster actress, but she was like the working actress of the 90s. And I believe Scream 3 came out in 2000 or 2001. So it's technically post 90s, but everything about that movie screams like mid to late 90s Hollywood, including the fact that Parker Posey plays a huge role in it. They have that scene with Parker, Courtney Cox, and
Patrick,
talking about Carrie
Patrick
Fisher.
Warburton.
No, Carrie Fisher.
Damn. Oh yeah, that was good
like
too.
one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It's so good. And yeah, and believe me, I am with you on the Roman of it all. But since you covered Roman, I gotta throw Parker Posey that love because I loved Jennifer in that movie. The scene when when she just walks over to Patrick Warburton and passes out in his arms, like it's perfect. She plays that role so perfectly. Unlike whoever played the Sydney stand-in, I didn't like that girl too much.
Oh, Emily Mortimer.
Is that who it was?
I believe so. I don't think she was, again, she's not playing herself playing Sydney,
Yeah,
but
she's Sarah Darling is the actress.
Yes. No, Sarah Darling is Jenny
no,
McCarthy.
no.
I don't remember what the character's
Angelina
name.
Tyler.
Okay. I was like, I didn't remember her name, but yeah. Meg, do you want to throw one in?
This is so hard for me because again, like, because I'm not a horror person. The only person I talk about these movies with is this group, and we clearly love everybody so much. But like, in thinking about it while everybody was talking, I was thinking Mason Gooding's character, just in thinking of the continuation of the franchise. I think he could be the new Dewey. Like, no one's gonna be Dewey, but like as terms of his like emotional role within the group that's being targeted, like, and the fact that he's been stabbed to a point where he should have died in both 5 and 6, like, feels very Dewey.
He's already the new Dewey.
Right? Like, I think that's just like what came to me. I was like, we do need a new Dewey, and I think that maybe he could be it. But like, I get everybody else that I like love are the people that everybody loves, like Stu Macher. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know if everybody loves
Stu Macher. Everybody loves
people.
Stu.
I love Stu.
When I first wrote this question down, like for me, I was actually thinking about Dewey from the sense of he was underappreciated by the people around him in the movies. Like even in the first one, and this if you watch Scary Movie, it becomes really apparent the way they parody him as an idiot and a doofus. But in the first one, like he's the one that asked the sheriff about could the phone be cloned? Like he was on to Billy in a way that everyone dismissed. And then like, yeah, they did play up. He was young and he was a little naive and whatever. So like I immediately thought of him, but I'm going to say I also really love Tatum. And it is solely for this one moment when she smacks Stu in the head with the lollipop. And it is so small and so subtle, but just like that said to me, says so much about her personality. And I was like, I knew she had to die. I also think her death, we didn't talk about it, but her death, as much as we made fun of like, I would never crawl through the garage door. Like that was also one of the ones that does stick with me because of how crazy it is. But I knew she had to die, but that is a character that I would have liked to see go further because of how spunky she was and how much like clearly Sydney needed someone like that. And we saw how Sydney kind of fell apart, not just because of the murders, but like in Scream 2 and Scream 3, like she really didn't have anyone. And that bummed me out. And I feel like we didn't realize what we had with Tatum or what Sydney had with Tatum.
Yeah, the fact that she tried to crawl through the cat door really ruined Tatum for me. I'm so sorry.
But you're desperate and there's no way out. And you're like, I'm thin. I can make it. Now, I could never make it. I'm not saying I'm thin. She was thin. She felt like she had to do whatever she could to try to save herself.
And she was also, look, we're adults talking about how she made a dumb choice. She was a literal teenager.
Well, if we're now clarifying that it's not necessarily underappreciated, my favorite Scream character of all time is Randy.
Well, no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like it's still underappreciated, but not necessarily by the audience.
Yes. Okay.
So But yeah, I mean, Randy is great. I think he would probably be mine too. I will also say style icon Gail Weathers. I could do a whole podcast episode about style icon Gail Weathers and all of the books that she wrote that I would like to read.
So, like, are we going to talk about the bangs
Well, I mean, that's
included?
not a style icon part of it.
I just wanted to clarify.
I mean, maybe for some people, so everybody had the Rachel growing up, right? I had the Gail Weathers from Scream One. I had the like chunky blonde highlights in the like shoulder length hair. And I literally went into my stylist with a photo of her from Scream from like Entertainment Weekly and was like, those are the highlights I want. Now, I think the point was that she was this, kind of low budget local news. I don't know how to say this nicely, not style icon, but I loved it when I was 12, 13 and was like, do that to my hair. So I didn't do the bangs. I will stop. I stopped before the bangs.
I was going to say, I just wanted to clarify, was with all due respect to her, but those bangs were not the best of her looks in the Scream movies.
Yeah.
No, they were not. Well, thank you guys for coming on again, for being return guests to Made Possible by Pop Culture, and for talking about Scream. I feel like we could have done a whole season on Scream.
What if we do an annual Scream Halloween episode of your podcast?
Well, then I should have structured this in a way that would allow for an easier follow-up.
None of us are going to remember what we said a year from now.
And I think we could do it where this is the general Scream discussion, and then we do an episode per movie.
And especially there's going to be a new movie.
Right. And then there, I'm sure, would be, who knows what'll happen. That's actually something I've kicked around in terms of like how to revamp the format going forward. Is I do think I want to do small seasons dedicated to one title, whether it's a franchise or a TV show or whatever, and have guests on to talk about pieces of it. So yeah, I think we could easily do that with this. I just don't want it to turn into like a we watch it and comment type of podcast, because those are like 2.5 hours minimum because you're watching the movie, but also there's so much recap involved in that like I don't know how that's fun for people to listen to. Maybe it is. You guys on the internet, if that's fun for you, comment and tell me. I'm just not sure. So yeah, let's maybe kick this around and think about how to best do it. But I don't normally like Halloween, so I enjoy the fact that now I have a reason to look forward to it. If you've been inspired to watch Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream 4, Scream 5, even Scream 6, well, of course, they're streaming. The first 4, which I like to call the original, those are available on Max. 5 and 6 are on Paramount Plus. Scream 7, at the time of this recording, is not available yet. It will be in theaters February 2026 and available on streaming after that. As always, nobody has paid me to plug these particular streaming services, but if you want to have an easy way to find the things that we discussed, I like to list where you can find them. So thank you again for listening to this very special Roundtable episode of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. This is season 2, and we're not done yet. So like, comment, subscribe, follow on social media. Come back next week for a brand new episode.